Hi, everybody. This is Jordan Ramirez, and you are watching a brand new episode of Film Talk with Jordan Ramirez that is also available on Spotify. And with us is a special guest. Well, please welcome to the program, Courtney Hughes. It's good to see you, Courtney.
Good to see you too. Thank you for allowing me on your show.
Okay, thank you so much. And before we get started with why you picked this film, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I love old movies. I love classic movies. I grew up with quite a few.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think that there's a lot of people that don't appreciate older films, which is why I gravitate to them more. I
Mm-hmm.
also just, from a personal standpoint, I love how films were made back then.
Mm-hmm.
And um I'm kind of obsessed with older films.
Yeah. Okay, so now the film that she has picked for today's episode is the all-American favorite, The Wizard of Oz from 1939, directed by Victor Fleming, starring Judy Garland, Ray Bolger, Bert Lahr, Jack Haley, the great Margaret Hamilton, Billie Burke, Clara Blandick, Charley Grapewin, and more. And oh, I forgot to mention Billie Burke and the great Frank Morgan as the Wizard of Oz. So, why did you pick this film?
So this film has a lot of personal, um, love from me, if you will.
Okay.
This was the one movie that I actually did grow up with, and for some reason, just as a kid, I've always gravitated to this movie. It's my go-to both as a kid and as an adult when I'm sick and I'm laying in bed. It's the first movie that comes on the TV.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it was the first thing I wanted when I was in the hospital when I was in kindergarten for something, and, the hospital was like, "Oh, you can bring movies in for her and stuff," and I said, "Well, I want The Wizard of Oz," and I had, a Barbie Dorothy doll from I think
Mm.
it's the 1999 edition. I
Okay.
had that with me, and it's the first movie that ever made me, um, w appreciate the character of Dorothy, which is why I
Mm-hmm.
love the actress so much,
Mm-hmm.
and, I absolutely I don't know, it's just one of those movies that I just gravitated to as a kid, and it's actually interesting because when I talk to, like, colleagues and coworkers about this movie, there are people that have told me, "Well, I've never seen this movie," or "Things in this movie scared me," and I always
Mm.
say, "This movie never scared me as a kid." I'm probably one of those kids that's like, "Nah, this movie never scared me,"
No.
but kind of a fun, trivia for me, if you will,
Okay.
is we grew up with the VHS edition. I
Mm.
forget which one, the 90s, I forget which one,
Yeah.
but this particular VHS came with a making. So every
Mm.
time we watched the movie, I'd say, "Can I watch the making?" And my parents would go, "Absolutely." So every time I'd watch the movie, I'd watch the making. But believe
Mm-hmm.
it or not, there's portions of the making that actually scared me more than the film itself.
Wow. It's amazing. So now that we talked about why you picked this film, tell us a little bit about why you like the star of the film, Judy Garland.
Okay, so I was homeschooled most of my life,
Okay.
and I was about 14 and I needed to come up with a report.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what happened, but it was late at night, right before I went to bed. And I was thinking about The Wizard of Oz, and I'm thinking, I love the character of Dorothy. Let's look up the actress. Because at that time, my siblings and I were starting to actually do more on the computer
Mm-hmm.
and stuff like that. So I looked up Judy Garland on YouTube, and I came across a couple biographies on her and was hooked like that.
Mm.
I felt for her, what she went through, but I loved her talent as well.
Mm.
And when I looked her up, there were movies on YouTube at that time that you could watch. So I got
Mm-hmm.
my hands on some of them, was able to watch them. I'm like, I just love her so much. So she ever since then, I have gotten, like, other older actresses and actors on my list, but she has never not been ranked number 1. She's still ranked
Mm.
number 1 as my favorite actress.
Yeah, that's amazing. Have you seen the one with Renee Zellweger as Judy Garland?
I have, yes.
Oh, okay. So, what did you think of her interpretation of the actress?
Um, I wasn't a fan, honestly. I mean,
Mm,
nothing against Renee Zellweger. My mom loves
mhm,
her. I have nothing against her, but I thought she was odd casting
mm,
personally.
okay.
And her singing, when she sang, it doesn't sound like Judy Garland.
Mm,
And that's kind of a nitpick, I think, for me
okay.
personally. And ever since the Me and My Shadows biopic, which is
Mhm,
everyone would know is based on Lorna Luft's book,
mhm,
um, no biopic has ever come close, I
mm,
think. It's not, and there's a lot of fabrication in that movie that annoyed the daylights out of me.
mhm.
Not a fan.
No, no, I understand. I mean, there was a made for TV movie about Judy Garland's life in the early
Yes.
2000s. I think I remembered that one. I watched it. It was based on Lorna Luft's auto book about her mother and what she was like. And I did see a couple of pictures that she made before and after Oz that I thought were pretty interesting. She was in Meet Me in St. Louis from
Mm,
1944. She was in a film Easter Parade with Fred Astaire, and she made her sort of comeback picture A Star Is Born from 1954.
mhm,
And I think one of her last pictures was I Could Go On Singing from 1963.
mhm.
Yeah, which was, I think that was like the last time she appeared on the movie screen. And I don't, I think pretty much she retired from acting on the screen is what I'm getting.
Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah, she was done, I think, at that point.
yeah, I mean, well, this is a little bit of an interesting trivia tidbit. She was originally supposed to be cast in the 1967 feature film Valley of the Dolls, but in that, uh, but uh, but she never got a chance to play because of the fact that there were reports that she showed up very late or that she was always locking herself up in her dressing room.
Yeah.
So instead, she was replaced by Susan Hayward, who ended up playing the role instead. So it was sort of like her big comeback, but it never happened.
Yeah, I mean, I have thoughts on that because Valley of the Dolls was one of those movies I didn't like my first viewing, but I've
Hmm.
since grown to appreciate it, mostly
Hmm.
because I'm a Patty Duke fan. She's actually pretty high on the list too as one of my favorites.
Yes.
But there was a lot of similarities between Patty and Judy too that I noticed.
Hmm.
And reading Patty Duke's autobiography, Call Me Anna, she talked a bit about Valley of the Dolls and Judy being there. And I got the sense that she actually befriended her and they got close.
Mm.
And and it was hard for her whenever Judy was fired. What
Hmm.
gets me though is watching that movie. That character is not likable. And
Hmm.
part of me is like, okay, I want to see Judy Garland in the same movie with Patty Duke because I just love them too. The other part of me is like, yeah, but I don't want to see Patty Duke beat Judy Garland up either.
Mm.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
And again, going back to the character, she's not really likable.
Hmm.
So I think it would be hard to see Sweet Judy in that role. It would have
Hmm.
showed her range because she was an amazing actress, but she always played the girl next door. She
Yeah.
never played anything else other than that.
Yeah.
So, it definitely would have given her something different to do,
Hmm.
but I think a lot of people would have been like, "Oh, sweet Dorothy, what is she doing playing this woman?"
Yes. So yes, so now that we mentioned a little bit about Judy Garland, the star of the film, and also about a little bit about the film, so I want to interject here because I always try to put some of my thoughts into The Wizard of Oz since I remembered seeing this on VHS. I imagine we're both from the same era. But I remembered seeing this, and the one thing I remembered is um oh my goodness. And I remembered I had to bring this up. John Waters, one of the most interesting filmmakers. He's a fan of the film, and I loved when he said, "I'm the only kid in the audience who never understood why Dorothy had to go back to Kansas in this in this dreary black and white sepia tone farm with an aunt that dresses bad and I think is mean too, when she can live in a land with magic shoes, flying monkeys, and gay lions."
Oh, jeez.
I mean that's just
Oh
him.
my.
Yeah, that's just what he says. And he said the performance that he loved. I mean, he loves Judy Garland too. I mean, I'm not putting him down or anything, but he said the
Right.
one performance that really made him interested in the movie was Margaret Hamilton's performance as the Wicked Witch of the West, because he said his favorite lines in the movie was, "Who killed my sister? Who killed the Wicked Witch of the West? Was it you?" So and he also liked her because to him she was like the best scene stealer in the picture, which
I can see that.
yeah. But yeah, I just thought I would interject about that. For me, as I got older, I because I'm not just a classic movie buff like you are, I'm also a bit of an anime fan, and I also saw this film as there's a term that in Japanese it's called an isekai, but I will just translate it as the Alice in Wonderland genre, which basically is a basically it's a living person. It's basically a real person who lives in the real world who was either swept away or transported to a fantasy world. And I could see traces of it in this film because I that film, which is basically the American version of Alice in Wonderland, Peter Pan, Chronicles of Narnia, and all those stories, they're basically the original prototypes for what became known as the isekai subgenre uh, in the anime fandom. So I thought because it does have some of the tropes, it does have like a non-magical person swept away into this fantasy land, and when she is first put to Munchkin Land in Oz, the first thing that Glinda the Good Witch says, "Are you a good witch or a bad witch?" It's sort of like the summoning type of prototype, which I thought was pretty interesting. And she has her companions and she goes on a journey. It's sort of like the hero's journey,
Mhm.
very similar to which is basically what The Wonderful Wizard of Oz by L. Frank Baum was about. It's basically the hero's journey that lasted from the first book up until the last book, which I think is The Patchwork Girl of Oz. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm currently in that book too, actually, because I
Yeah.
wanted to try and read the Oz series. I actually
Mm,
grew up with the first book. I unfortunately never got to read any of the other ones until my adulthood,
okay.
but I love the third one's probably my next favorite, and
Mm-hmm.
then I forget which one. I can't remember which book it was, but the other one I really liked too was the one where Dorothy actually comes back to Oz with her aunt and uncle. I thought that
Mm.
one was a good book too. I can't
No, it's
think of the name of it though.
yes. And also because Wizard of Oz is now in our lexicon, the book and the musical Wicked, of course. There's a connection because legally the book is set before the events of The Wonderful Wizard of Oz by L. Frank Baum, and the musical, which now is being turned into a film and it's supposed to be released later this year. I haven't seen the trailer, and my thoughts are I mean, I've seen the musical when it was on the stage. I'm not sure about whether I would like to see it on the big screen because I have somewhat mixed reactions about film adaptations of Broadway musicals.
Okay, well that's
Yeah.
understandable. Yeah.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts about Wicked, which is the prequel to The Wonderful Wizard of Oz?
Okay, so for me, it's kind of a mixed bag. There was a point where I was obsessed with Wicked, although I've never seen the actual stage version. I the closest I
Hmm.
got was someone uploaded the stage version with the original cast, which is
Mm-hmm.
who I liked, and I thought it was good.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but then later, like, I'm thinking about it, I'm like, "Well, yeah, but why are we making the Wicked Witch sympathetic? Like, why are we doing that?"
Mm-hmm.
And some to me, prequels are hit and miss because there's some movies that are meant to give you a surprise, but once
Mm-hmm.
you make the prequel, that surprise is gone.
Mm.
And it's kind of like, "Okay, really? Like, do I really wanna see this?" But when the movie was announced, I was more or less like, "Eh, it is what it is."
Mm-hmm.
But a coworker of mine who originally didn't want anything to do with it was like, "I watched the trailer and now I wanna see it." So ever since then, I've seen several trailers and I'm like, "Okay,
Okay.
okay, I might see it. I might see it.
Mm.
I don't know. I might."
Mhm.
But
All right.
I do like the idea of seeing it over the weekend, just propping my feet up and just watching it in
Yeah.
the theater. But
Of
I am
course.
looking forward to people's opinions on it because 'cause I'm one of those people that I like to watch people's reactions and
Mhm.
everything. Most movies that I watch, like, once I'm done watching it, I immediately go to YouTube and go, "Movie reaction or review," and then see what people have to say about it, and then go,
Yes.
"Okay, yeah, I noticed that," or, "I did not notice that. That's so interesting."
Mm.
So, I'm always on the lookout for that kinda thing. So, I
Yeah.
will be excited to hear people's opinions when Wicked comes out.
That's understandable too, and I and thank you for that.
And now a message from Jordan Ramirez for Film Talk with Jordan Ramirez.
I want to take a break from this episode to thank my listeners/viewers who watch the videos on my YouTube channel and listen to each new episode on Spotify. While this show is a labor of love and passion that isn't about the movies that I like, this is also a show that is about the films that you like. Have a film that you want to recommend to the podcast? Make sure to recommend it in the comments section on YouTube and on Spotify, and you will receive a shout out in a future episode. Want to be a guest on the podcast? Click on the sign up form link in the episode description for further details. If you like this episode or my previous episodes, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more interviews in the near future. The goal for this channel is to reach up to 100 subscribers both on YouTube and on Spotify. It's just that easy. And now, back to our regularly scheduled episode. So now that we have talked about a little bit of Wicked and a little bit of the movie and about Judy Garland, so tell us about your YouTube channel, Classics with Courtney, because I watched maybe a few episodes of your series. So
Oh, thank you.
yes. So when did you come to the realization of having your own YouTube channel about, reviews of classic movies and also maybe doing a little bit of just getting people to know about classic movies better?
So I started, oh gosh, probably around 2015. I originally had a Judy Garland channel where
Mm-hmm.
I'd point out things I noticed and things, but then that kind of fell to the wayside. But then I thought, well, I don't want to just limit myself to just Judy Garland, and I can put Judy Garland on a classic movie channel if I wanted. So I
Mm-hmm.
thought, well, I want to talk about just old movies in general. And I watched a lot of people that also gave me kind of that boost, like, okay, maybe I can do this. And yeah, I started, oh gosh, I don't know when I really started this one, probably around 2017, maybe 2018 ish.
Okay.
And then I did go on a hiatus, but ever since then, especially this year, I've been trying to get more content out. But I don't know. I love to bring people on for the ride, I guess.
Mm.
I want to encourage people that they should watch a film while also saying, well, this is what I personally had a problem with or my thoughts on the
Mm.
film. In fact, most of my reviews, it's kind of funny. Most of my reviews I do not rewatch, okay?
Oh,
It's like I record it, I edit it, and then once it's uploaded, I don't watch it. But
okay.
the recent ones where I'm actually developing clips and stuff, I've actually enjoyed making those movies more or
Mhm.
making those videos more, sorry.
Okay.
And then, I actually gone back and rewatched one. I'm like, "I really did a good job on that one," and I believe me, I really don't think like that on a regular basis.
Mhm.
But, I just like to be able to have fun with what I'm making and then hopefully get people to see what's going on. So, a good example is when I covered The Heiress, which came
Mm.
out, oh my gosh, when did that come out? 1949?
Yeah, 49.
Okay, thank you. And
Yeah.
I was watching it one day, and my mom caught the tail end of it. So she saw Olivia de Havilland, and she's like, "Well, she seems kind of mean." And I said, "Well, you didn't see the journey she went through." So
Mm-hmm.
here, my mom watches most of my content, and when I uploaded that review, she watched it.
Mm-hmm.
And she goes, "Now I understand, like, you okay, I got why she ended up having that character change and everything." So
Mm-hmm.
she's like, "Okay, I see that now."
Yeah, I actually have the film The Heiress on DVD, and I also have the remake Washington Square on VHS, which is based on the same story by Henry James.
Mhm.
So I do like both Jennifer Jason Leigh and Olivia de Havilland's version of the Catherine Sloper character, which I thought was pretty interesting. Because in the story, she's portrayed as normal looking. She's not beautiful. She does not possess any talent or anything that would make her noticeable, and she's also socially awkward.
Yes.
Yes, in the scene in The Heiress, when one of the characters is trying to make conversation with her, she barely says a word, and she's not really that conversationable when she's talking with other people. But when she does meet in the original film, the Cliff Montgomery character, at first it looked at the Montgomery Clift character, excuse me. At first it seemed like as if they had a connection until her father reveals that he is only in it because of her wealth and not because of the fact that she's beautiful or anything,
Mm.
which I thought it's sort of a failed love romantic film, but it's also a great character study movie because I like Olivia de Havilland. I love her performances. Both in this film, she also did The Snake Pit the year before, and she also this was the Heiress was the second film in which she won an Academy Award. The first was To Each His Own from 1946. And I saw her very first movie role was in the 1935 film adaptation of A Midsummer Night's Dream. She was like 18 years old in that picture.
See, I've never seen that one, but I want to. I
Mm.
think doesn't that movie also have a very young Mickey Rooney?
It does. It does. The only thing that I would say about the film for those who either don't like films based on Shakespeare or basically films that are a little bit glossy is that it's very slow. There are some portions of the film that are very slow, like when you see the fairies going into the sunlight. There are some like ballet operatic type sequences, and that tends to
Ah,
slow the picture down, or the fact that it's some of the like slowly drawn out sequences where it's trying to convey to the plot, it doesn't really feel like it's necessary. It's a little bit like a drag.
yeah, I definitely get that because I mean, like I said, I love older movies, but there's some that I can watch and then go, I really don't want to see this sequence, and then
Mm.
usually end up fast forwarding it. One, is- one is off the top of my head would be Ziegfeld Girl. Okay,
Okay.
Jimmy Stewart, another one of my favorites, is in that
Mm-hmm.
movie. But whenever, what's his name, Tony?
Oh.
Oh shoot, the romantic guy in that movie. I
Oh.
can't think of his name,
Oh. Okay.
but I do know he was married to Sid Charisse, though. I do
Oh.
know that.
Okay.
But
Okay.
that moment where he's singing to this girl and then it goes into like this whole thing where they're showing off the costumes and stuff. I fast forward it until I see Judy and then I'll go, "Oh, I want to see Judy." Then fast forward to the end till they get to the
Yeah.
singing part where it's the end and I'm like, "Okay, we're good."
Yeah, I mean that's somewhat me too. I know sometimes I'm a little bit nitpicky on some movie musicals. I remembered when I was in musical class, there was we were watching the film On the Town. And in the
Okay.
film, yes, we because it was part of the movie musical class. And the one scene was, I think it was the scene where, oh my goodness, Betty Garrett or someone was singing about the Neanderthal, like going back to the Neanderthal days, and they're in the museum, and all the guys, and I think three of the girls or one of the girls, they were in the museum, and all of a sudden it turns into like a racial masquerading where they dressed up as indigenous people, and they were dressing up, and it just like it was like some of my classmates were a little bit uncomfortable with the sequence. Like it is of its time, but it's
Yeah.
also a bit politically incorrect to watch scenes like that with your classmates who are new to watching older movies as
Mm.
well.
Is that scene too where Ann Miller starts dancing?
I
Like, is she
believe
dancing throughout that?
I believe so. I think it was either Ann Miller or it was Betty Garrett, or maybe one of the two. But yeah, that was just that one sequence where it was like it was meant to be about like going back to caveman times, and then it went to racial masquerading, and I'm like, it's a bit uncomfortable, but it is of its time. That's the one thing that never aged well.
That's the thing, since we're talking about that, I do wanna bring up, some of Judy Garland's films where she does blackface along with Mickey Rooney,
Yeah.
and people from what I understand, at least from, like, TikTok, there's a lot of people that blame Judy herself.
No,
And
no.
but there's a lot of people, myself included, that's like, that's not her fault. She was hired to do a job. She wasn't going to tell the studio no because she didn't have anyone to back her up. She had to do what she was told. So,
Mm-hmm.
in my mind, that's the studio's fault that would have
Mm-hmm.
made her do that. And I believe she did it 3 times. She did it
Mm.
in Everybody Sing from 1938. I think it was
Okay.
1938.
All right.
Babes in Arms, which came out the same year as The Wizard of Oz,
Mm-hmm.
and Babes on Broadway from 1941. I
Mm.
believe that was I believe that's all she did it for,
Okay.
but I don't like the idea of people blaming Judy herself because I don't think she had anything to do with that. In fact,
Mm.
people have said that she's come out saying, "That's I didn't wanna do that." Like,
Mm-hmm.
that I'm uncomfortable with that, and she wasn't racist or anything like that.
No.
So, yeah, I don't
No, I mean,
blame her.
I would say it's not her fault, nor is it like, I mean, there were other actors that were doing it at the time that
Yeah.
unfortunately did it. Like the Marx Brothers did it in one of their films. Shirley Temple did it in one of her movies.
Yes.
Eddie Cantor, Al Jolson,
Yeah.
Fred Astaire did it in Swing Time. Uh,
I have
he
not seen that movie.
oh, uh, I'm so sorry.
That's
So
okay, that's okay, that's okay.
yeah, so
I can't picture Fred Astaire doing that.
uh, so yeah, he did a number called Bojangles of Harlem in the movie Swing Time, and he does do it in blackface. But
Okay.
yeah, I'm not trying to ruin the mood or anything, but I just thought I would bring that. No, but yeah, I have that movie Swing Time. I have Magnificent Ambersons from Criterion. They always do a great job restoring films, and they also try to bring in like great context and clarity for it was of its time. It was never meant to be like reflecting the present. It was just a way to say was the norm. This was the norm of
Mhm.
what they did.
Yeah.
And also the movie Showboat, they did this in there too.
Okay.
The 36 version, if I
Okay.
yeah. But yeah, so going back to classic movies, there were a few movies that I have seen that I noticed you did on your reviews. I like Shadow of a Doubt. Hitchcock's he called it one of his personal favorites, and I thought it was a great film that I liked
Yes.
from him. I did you see Rope?
I actually seen every single one of Hitchcock's movies, but yes, I have seen Rope.
Okay.
My favorite moment in that movie is Jimmy Stewart's epic speech at the end.
Yes,
That's incredible.
it is. Okay, so I've seen that one. I've seen your review on the Invasion of the Body Snatchers. I have seen the movie.
Yes.
Yes, I like the original one, and I have seen the 1978 version as well. So I mean, they're both good in their own ways, and they both have different interpretations of Jack Finney's original novel.
Yeah.
And of course, there were a number of other films that I think were made during this time that also reflected on this as well, that maybe people may not understand. So so I will talk a little bit about some of the others. So I also have I don't have like a physical copy, but I have it on my Nook. I still keep my Nook with me. Peter Bogdanovich's Who the Devil Made It, an interview with 14 directors whom he interviewed from 1960 up until 1995, and it does include Alan Dwan, Raoul Walsh, Alfred Hitchcock, George Cukor, Frank Tashlin, and the most recent one in that book at that time, oh my goodness, the director of 12 Angry Men,
Sidney Lumet?
yeah, Sidney Lumet, that's the one. You almost yeah. But yeah, I do love his interactions with these directors, which I thought were pretty interesting. My He said the longest he had was with Howard Hawks, the director of some of his best movies, including the original Scarface from 1932. He also
Okay.
directed, Bringing Up Baby, His Girl Friday, oh my god, Sergeant York, all these films, and his most epic western, 1959's Rio Bravo with John Wayne. But yeah, I think my favorite portion of the interview was him interviewing George Cukor, Chuck Jones, the great Chuck Jones, Frank Tashlin, a former cartoonist turned filmmaker, and I think as you mentioned, Don Siegel. He got a chance to interview Don Siegel for his book, and he said in when he interviewed him years ago that originally the ending with Kevin McCarthy screaming out at the drivers as they were on the road, that was supposed to be the original ending, but for some reason the studio asked him to put a tacked on ending, a sort of like a redeeming, like the authorities are going to be on their way to make sure that they go after the pot people. So that was a tacked on ending that the studio wanted him to put in, and that was not the original ending that Don Siegel wanted to go for, which I thought was pretty interesting. So we're almost out of time. So now that we talked a little bit about some of the films that we discussed about, do you have any like favorites from your YouTube channel that you would recommend to the audience, maybe just to give another try, or maybe just if they're interested in classic movies, rewatching them?
Oh boy, just for my YouTube channel?
Or any other films that are not from your YouTube channel that you would recommend. uh
um, okay, so as far as recommendation for like some of my personal favorites that
mhm,
everybody should see,
mhm.
um, other than The Wizard of Oz, of course, I would say
Okay.
Miracle Worker
Okay.
with Patty Duke and Anne Bancroft. Amazing movie.
Mhm.
Came out the same year as To Kill a Mockingbird, another fantastic movie. Both movies made me cry multiple
Mhm.
times.
Okay.
The Ghost and Mrs. Muir, I would also recommend if you like romance. That is
Mm.
actually the first movie for me that I mean, I love romance,
Mhm.
but the The Ghost and Mrs. Muir is to me like my favorite romance, and I love the
Mm.
score. I just I adore that movie.
Mm.
Um, I'd say other than them, let me think here. I'd say for stylistic, I'd say Vertigo
Mm.
because I mean, a lot of people say Vertigo is one of the best movies ever made. But then
Mhm.
you got people, including me, I would guess I'm half and half, who
Yeah.
could say it's amazingly well made,
Mhm.
but it's not a perfect movie. But then very
Mhm.
few films are.
Yeah.
But I definitely would recommend those. Um, oh my goodness. And then I think if I can, I want to add in a Christmas movie here.
Okay.
I would say, actually, I'll throw you two. I would
Okay.
say Christmas in Connecticut with Barbara Stanwyck.
All
That is
right.
such a fun movie. I love the casting, and I got a kind of crush on Dennis Morgan, so he's so cute. And then the other one, which is one of the ones I grew up with, is Scrooge, the 1951 British version with Alistair
Mm.
Sim, because
Yes.
that to me is the definitive and I'm not
Mm.
saying because I grew up with it, there's just a lot to appreciate with the film.
Mhm.
And I mean, I've seen a lot of the older versions and I've come to appreciate them over time. But a lot of them were a disappointment to me at first viewing because the Alistair Sim one just set the standard for me that I'm like, why didn't you do it this way? What happened? But I definitely would recommend those movies for sure.
Okay. Thank you so much for your recommendations, and we're just about to wrap up. We have around 4 minutes. So where can my listeners and viewers look you up, like on your social media feed, and where can they find your what is the name of your YouTube channel so that they will know when to see the next videos?
So my YouTube is Classics with Courtney. I do post like some vintage stuff on there as well, but I mostly focus on older movies. I try to
Mm-hmm.
upload every Friday, so you'll be having a new video coming up this coming Friday.
Okay.
And I also have an Instagram and Facebook page under the same name. I also run another Instagram account where I just post old Hollywood actors and actresses and film clips. That one is 20s underscore 60s Hollywood. You can follow
Hmm.
me on there as well.
Okay, thank you so much. And I love your YouTube channel, and I love some of the pictures that you posted on 20s underscore 60s. The one film I feel like I want to see is what are your thoughts on The Bad Seed from 1956 with Patty McCormack?
Oh my gosh, that's thank you. First off, it's directed by Mervyn LeRoy, who
Hmm.
produced The Wizard of Oz. So,
Yes.
yay! Um, the other part is, I absolutely love Patty McCormack in that movie. In fact, I actually got an autograph photo from her, which is
Oh,
hanging on
okay.
my wall.
All right.
Um, but I will say, my first viewing, I did not like it. Like my
Okay.
first viewing, I wanted to smack Rhoda and just like, dang it, sit down, do whatever. Just you need to sit
Uh,
there because you're a bad girl. But for some reason that movie never left me, and I ended up going back to watch it again. And now I've actually seen it in 1 week, I think twice.
okay.
Within this year, I've seen it like 5 times. So it's definitely now a favorite of mine. I actually
Mm,
have the DVD.
awesome.
So yeah, I've grown to appreciate that movie. So
Okay. I just thought I would bring it up there because, I was noticing it on your YouTube channel and I thought I just want to watch the movie first and then I'll watch the review because I'm sort of like watch the movie first and then watch the review so that I
yeah.
would yes. Okay, so thank you, Courtney, for being on the podcast and I hope that maybe we can meet each other another time at another place and maybe we could talk soon. I loved the conversation that we had together, and thank you for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having me on the show. I love talking to you too, and I definitely would love to do this again.
Okay. For Film Talk with Jordan Ramirez. And until then, I'll see you at the movies. And Courtney, thank you again for being on the podcast, and I hope we meet each other soon.
Thank you.
Okay. So long, Courtney. Bye.
Bye.